Time to go turn on the oven.
Nope, it's time to go. Hi, everybody. Mom doesn't have time to go turn on the oven. So here we are. What moves you to action? Welcome to our live stream for today. Let me tell you a little story. A friend decided that fun for him on a certain day, living life, was going to the races. This friend understood that ideas identify in mind with the existence of everything. Therefore, the horse races to him existed as idea, a state of mind, capital M. Now, this impersonal point of view paid off for 7 races. And on the 8th race, he picked the horse intuitively as he had picked the others, with this one difference. He went out to the paddock to see the horse, and the horse didn't look good in his personal opinion. So he changed his mind and chose another that looked better to his personal sense. If he had followed his intuition as he did in the 7 previous races, he would have been some $300 ahead. When our betting friend let his personal sense dull his vision in horse racing, the personal concept took the place of having fun as idea. He naturally lost his fun. That's a story from Margaret Laird's pamphlet, Personal Concept, on page 3. So welcome, Betty. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say about our subject today? What moves you to action?
Yeah, because the story points out a really important idea. And that is that you set the stage for your everyday living by who you're being as you walk on.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are free, when you're really relaxed and kind of present to what's going on and just there, you're open and you're listening. You have kind of a sense of, oh, this is interesting. And in that state, your intuition, your instinct, your hunches are all right there, and they come up, and you ignore them at your own peril.
Right.
As long as you are operating out of, oh, this is interesting, and on you go, you have a lot of freedom and a lot of joy in what's going on with your experience. When you decide to pass judgment on what's going on, as if it were something out there that could deliver peace and joy and power to you, guess what? The peace and joy and power that were present are cut off. You're blinded to it, in other words, by your own opinion as a human being.
Yeah.
And you keep yourself in the dark. And there goes your joy, there goes your freedom. And we do it without even half realizing it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's one of the things you want to look at today.
Right. Yeah. So what we're looking at, we can get right into it here. So I'm just going to dive in. Now we're using Personal Concept, the pamphlet by Margaret Laird, as our reference point for this particular conversation. And on page 2, Margaret Laird wrote, "Man lives as knowledge. Knowledge doesn't come into being. It is a self-existing state of complete, primal, underived being."
Yep. It's like it's constitutional. Who you are is knowledge present.
Mm-hmm. Now,
so,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, now there's a distinction between knowledge and understanding. Are we talking about that distinction here, or is it, you know what I mean? So I would think that this would say man lives as understanding.
No, man lives as knowledge.
Okay.
It's like I'm not aware of, I'm awareness.
Right.
Okay. Understanding is the self-taught that comes from experience.
Yeah.
Knowledge is present, period.
Oh, got it.
When I
Okay.
show up,
Whether I
knowledge is present.
right. So whether I tap into that knowledge or whatever is where I'm coming from. And if I cloud that with all my judgments and opinions and personal sense, then I've got no access, real access to just the pure knowledge.
Yeah. And when you tap in, you have no access because you've got you in your mind.
Right. But okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is, it's like a 24/7 opportunity in living to always discover what's present.
Yeah.
When the look of you shows up. You know, a couple of times ago, we had what's present when Janet shows up.
Right.
What's present when Betty shows up? What's
Right.
present when Kim shows up?
Right.
You know, the answers are pretty much the same, but they're individually lived.
Right.
And if it's all unconscious, then so is your experience of living.
Right.
And you keep wondering, where did that come from? Goodness sakes. And as Margaret said in one of her seminars, I didn't think broken foot, but I had a broken foot. You know,
Right.
it's
Right,
like
right.
it's like the feedback from the moment by moment self-identification that's going on.
Yeah.
You have yourself on your mind as a human being. You're losing sight of what has that occur.
Yeah.
And you want to be clear on that distinction. It wouldn't be there at all if the divinity or the God idea, self-expressing, were not the reality always present.
Right.
And since that is what's present when you show up as a human being, then you want to keep clear with yourself the role that is played by the human being.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you an opportunity to self-express.
Right.
If you Kim express, that's a different story. If you self-express, you're home free.
Right. Yeah, very good. Very good. All right. And in Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy on 392, starting on line 22, said, your decisions will master you, whichever direction they take.
Yep.
Yeah.
They do too. I hate to tell you, but in your day-to-day stuff, I've learned this. This is going on today for me, as a matter of fact. For several days now in a row, I have a muscle that's uncomfortable, and I don't have any trouble with it at all up until after lunch. And then after lunch, I've got a sore muscle.
Right.
And so I thought to myself, huh. And the next day showed up the same way. And so I said to somebody that was here, I'm just fine all morning, but in the afternoon, I have a sore muscle. And guess what? In the afternoon, I have a sore muscle. It just stopped me cold when I realized exactly what I was doing, walking down the primrose path of being Betty, trying to run her life, instead of allowing myself to just be, leaving it alone. Oh, that's the way it looks today? Okay. And Margaret said a million times, if she said it once, oh, I don't know why it looks that way. The hell with it.
Right.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I have a sore muscle.
Right.
What kind of a sentence am I giving myself? And let me tell you, when you assign your stuff like that to yourself, letting it go, getting back to what's actually present and the feel of that is a much tougher job than if I just closed my mouth in the first place.
Right.
So I know when I recognize that I've done that, it's like an intellectual exercise to get myself back to, wait a minute, what's actually going on here? And I know what's actually going on. But until it's that automatic, like, oh, this is the way God looks. This is the dress God's wearing. On we go. When I get to that, there's freedom.
Right.
But when they get to the, oh, I gave myself a sentence, guess what? I persist and persist and persist because I resist having that there.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not there. But when I resist it, I insist that it is.
Right.
So I have to really leave it alone.
Yeah.
I have to take no thought. Just allow it to be.
Yeah.
And I think that isn't comfortable to do sometimes, you know. Most
Right.
of the time it's not comfortable. But what allows me to do it is a lifetime experience of living these facts consciously and leaving the picture alone. I've done it over and over and over many times. And I know that science is accurate. It doesn't keep me from doing it again, but I know that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's easier to let go of it than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever. But it's a challenge because we are so present to the look of ourselves, much more present to that than we are to the reality that's present when that look shows up.
Right. Yeah, that is true. I would say that is accurate. All right. And then Mary Baker Eddy went on to say, if you decide that climate or atmosphere is unhealthy, then it will be so to you.
Yeah, I've proven that to myself.
Same thing, from your mouth to God's ear. Right? Your mouth to God's ear, about 4 inches.
Yeah.
So yeah, very good. And then in your book on page 187, you say, consciousness acknowledged by the aware human individual as his ground of being generates an experience of health, wealth, and happiness in reflective daily living that is beyond one's ability to anticipate.
Yep.
So break that down a little bit. Consciousness acknowledged by the aware human individual as their ground of being generates an experience of health, wealth, and happiness, mostly because that consciousness acknowledged by the aware human individual is somebody living, being itself being.
You know, Margaret used to quote Thomas Merton, who said that the only thing that can acknowledge God is God. So this idea that a human being, two-legged animal or whatever, can acknowledge the spiritual facts is fiction.
Right.
The acknowledgement of spiritual facts is being itself self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings can't do that. That looks like Betty saying something. What's actually going on is the acknowledgement of a spiritual fact that governs being.
Mm-hmm.
It's being self-governed, looking like Betty speaking.
Right.
But quite often when you're in the midst of having that experience, if I can put it that way, you lose sight of the Betty.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I'm so with the idea that I know is true, that I can see that it's mine speaking, nothing to do with Betty.
Right.
And in that freedom, miracles occur from the human point of view.
Yeah.
Solutions arise.
Right.
Answers are found, and so on.
Yeah.
Because, and the reason that has that relationship is that the language picture, the picture that I have of Betty living her daily life, is in the past. It's already occurred. Anything I see, any language I see, the seen, heard, and felt is in the past. Mm-hmm. Because it's always a self-generating new moment, right now, right now, right now. So my reflection on what I see, feel, hear, taste, touch, all of that is playing with the past. So the past, actually, those pictures are feedback to me, telling me where I'm standing.
Right.
And if I'm standing in, I've got a sore muscle. Guess what? That's what I see. That's what my human picture includes. I put it there. And it's no more real than anything else I put in the picture.
Right.
But it is more real from the standpoint of it's a wake-up call.
Right.
It gets my attention very quickly to the fact that I'm playing that game with myself. It's time to stop and see what's actually true. So it has value that way.
Yeah. Very
But
good.
be clear that you live and move and have being as infinite mind manifest.
Right.
And what shows up in the language world calling itself Betty is simply the current look I've got of who I think I might be.
Right. Right. That's correct. So what I would love to invite everybody to give us a thumbs up or a heart if you're on, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, and then subscribe and get notifications so that we get greater visibility of these videos. So please, if you feel compelled to do that, we would love it. So anyways, just wanted to say that. Now let's see. Oops, I got to switch that back. Sorry.
You have a Mrs. Laird quote coming up.
Yes, I do, on personal concept on page 3. When you believe that what you are doing is the fun, it will frustrate you to turn to ashes in your hand. And is that really gets at the maybe so, maybe not kind of phenomenon? That something happens and you have a thing and it's like, well, maybe so, maybe not.
Yeah, you could say that if you want to play with it. But the fact of the matter is that the event, the incident, or the activity is not the fun. The fun that you're being has that event occur and not the other way around.
Right.
So
fun is generated and it looks like the event.
It's always your own divine being that is the fun. Joy constitutes man, says Mrs. Eddy, and it does. So what I'm involved in that looks like joy is my best view of being present as joy.
Right.
If I transfer that to the movie I'm watching or the game of bridge I'm playing or any other activity in my daily living, I lose the source. And it turns to ashes in my hands.
Okay.
I find I'm not enjoying what I'm doing because, of course, I never did. If I wasn't being the joy, it wasn't present at all.
Right.
And I blind myself to that when I think that the thing that I'm involved in produces the joy. This story at the beginning of the fellow that went to the races, he wanted to go and relax and have fun, and he loved going to the races. And from that point of view, he was successful going to the races. But when he got involved personally in the selection of the horse, he lost his fun because the horse didn't win.
Right.
And it was a sad picture, you know. So that story always reminds me that the source and condition, says Mrs. Eddy, of all existence is mind. The mind being me right now. Betty has no intelligence at all. Betty is a concept, the best view I've got of a reality that's present, that is divine mind self-expressing. universally present, constituting all that is and all that seems to be, whole, perfect, complete, all the time. I know you've heard all that before, Kim, but
I know, it's all good though. Now, when you separate mind and its thinking action, you deprive yourself of the joy and fullness of mind.
Yep.
Because you've got two things going on, not
Yep.
just the one.
Right.
All right. And on personal concept, page 3, in Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy says that this way: be firm in your understanding that the divine mind governs, and that in science, man reflects God's government.
Yeah. So that's always true. In science, there is no other government. And the government that is called God's government would be the God idea constituting my being.
Yeah,
showing up.
Right, showing up the only way we can see it.
Showing up exactly as I see it.
Right, yeah. The only way we can see it.
Yep.
All right. And a false belief is both the tempter and the tempted, the sin and the sinner, the disease and its cause.
Yep.
So I am the world I walk through.
Whether I acknowledge it or not.
That's right. Whether I want to be, whether I acknowledge it, whether it agrees with me or not.
Yeah. And that is the distinction, is acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Because I can't acknowledge something that isn't real for me.
Yeah.
And have any power. I could acknowledge that Betty is a movie star. Doesn't happen.
Right.
I could acknowledge that Betty races horses or whatever. So that words do not do it.
Right.
But an actual acknowledgement of spiritual fact is a powerful presence.
Okay. Because
it is God idea self-acknowledging.
Well, it's letting go of all of that personal sense, just
that's
boom, and that acknowledge it.
You don't let it go. It disappears and fades in the face of the fact.
Right.
It's not a struggle and an effort to let something go.
No, it's just in that it no longer is there.
That's right.
All of that's gone.
Yeah, good.
All right. And in Mind is the Athlete on page 187, you wrote it this way: the experience of health, wealth, and happiness occurs reliably as being or consciousness is acknowledged as source. Exactly what we just said.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Now I want to take a few minutes and I want to talk about your upcoming live cast that you've been busy at work on. So, because I think it ties in really nicely here in that, a lot of people have and struggle with, we do just fine in our study of science, and then something comes along and it hangs us up. Or the news, something happens on the news and we go, whatever point of view we have at that. And so talk about a little bit about how that's going to be addressed. It's going to be 2 evenings coming up here in July, direct teaching with Betty, direct interaction on Zoom, via Zoom. So it'll be you can participate from anywhere that you are. But talk a little bit about what had this subject come into being for you in terms of what we're going to be looking at.
Well, it's the practice. People call up on the phone and they've got all these little things going on. And oh dear, now what about this? And then next week they call and that was really fun. Oh, you wouldn't believe how that worked out. That just turned out beautifully. But now my brother came and on and on and on. Or else now the kids got kicked out of school, or now on and on and on. Right. So it's really a live cast devoted to talking about everyday stuff. And it's 24/7.
Yeah.
And science is not something that you can be well related to only on Sunday.
Right.
metaphysical science is a way of life. And it's a way of life that makes a huge difference in your experience humanly.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that it does, but it does. And that's the science that Mary Baker Eddy presented. And I love the section of a seminar that Margaret was talking about, that she said, we think that Mary Baker Eddy gave us Christian Science. She says, no, she says, we grew the ability to live science by bringing Mary Baker Eddy forward in our experience.
Right.
So we did it for ourselves. She didn't do it for us.
Right. So this live stream is going to be happening on July 18th and 19th from 4 to 6 p.m. So it's an evening, a couple of hours with some homework
Pacific
overnight.
time.
Right. Pacific time. It says that. And it's going to be a couple of hours both nights. And we call it 24/7 Science Alert, living science moment by moment, no matter what shows up. Having you have the freedom of living science, being present to science, and being able to get yourself seemingly out of any jam that you might fall into or get pulled into or get seduced by in the look, that you'll be able to instantly be able to go, okay, let's get with the facts. Working directly with Betty during these 2 days, these 2 evenings. And you can register at scientificmetaphysics.org/livecast. Just go there and you can register. And we have a special on just through the end of June. And then the price goes up to the full price. So grab the special and get yourself in, and we're going to have a fun time those 2 evenings. Anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah. The thing that is so, actually, is that this is available and workable at every level. You don't have to have been a Christian Scientist forever or a metaphysical science student forever. You can be a beginner and you say, okay, I'll give that a go. And it's just as effective for that individual as it is for anyone.
Right.
So at all levels, if you get the idea that's presented at this live cast, you'll be all set to live it bit by bit. The more you live it, the more you will live it, because you'll find out that it makes a huge difference for you.
Yeah.
So
very good.
Thank you.
All right. So that's where you go, scientificmetaphysics.org/livecast, and check it out and reserve your seat. All right. So here we go for the last set. And on Personal Concept, page 4, Margaret Laird wrote, the joy idea you are consciously living as thinking makes the map that shows you the road to having a good time all the time.
I love that sentence.
Yeah. Yep.
So then I put a note in, life is lived as idea.
Yeah.
It is. It's not me doing a lot of stuff. It's not Betty running around smartly doing this and that and something else. Living life is conscious awareness, because actually life lives you. Mm-hmm. You don't live life. Life has you. And right. The more you honor that, the freer you are and the more fun you have.
Right. Yeah, I remember the conversation we had earlier this week when I was questioning a choice I was making in my business, and I had been so sure of it the day before, and then I started to think, well, and I got in this conversation with Mom, and Mom said, just remember, life lives you and not the other way around. You'll know exactly what to do. And I did it. I was just like, oh my God, that is awesome. That's like, I love that. So yeah, it just got me with it, really. All right. And in Science and Health on page 394, line 7, Mary Baker Eddy says, knowledge that we can accomplish the good we hope for stimulates the system to act in the direction which mind points out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's a note that I had here about life lived as idea and the conscious sense, the conscious awareness that good is all that good is all is the good being all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you have a sense all is infinite mind, that's infinite mind being all.
Yeah.
The words don't say it, but the idea does.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. And in Mind is the Athlete on page 187, you wrote, willingness to acknowledge reality or consciousness as source makes a significant difference in human experience. And it does. When you're willing, when you have the willingness to drop whatever you've got going on, judgments, opinions, beliefs, whatever, and acknowledge reality or consciousness as source in the midst of all that, it's instant freedom.
Yeah, and I would switch your words around a little bit. It's not really a willingness to drop something so much as a willingness to acknowledge spiritual facts.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Okay.
That willingness carries you right through.
Yeah.
If you're actually willing to acknowledge spiritual facts, you got to know what they are, don't you? You're going to be consciously aware. And that awareness is perfection present.
Right. Yeah. And we'll leave you with this one thought. We shall be free as birds in the air, guided instinctively by the law of self-preservation and self-enjoyment when the personal sense of self is given up for the correct view. And that's page 3 of Personal Concept by Margaret Laird.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. And we will see you again next week on the 27th of June. We'll see you again next week at 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central. And in the meantime, check out the link and check out the live cast and register yourself in it and come spend an amazing 2 evenings and really gain some freedom and have some really good conversations. So that's what we're going to be doing on the 18th and 19th of July. So anyways, until next week, we'll see you then.